on? Yes. Welcome. Welcome. Convening the September 18th Montecito Planning Commission meeting at 9 a.m. on the 18th. If we can proceed to the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Mr. Villalobos, if we could have TV coverage announcement, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Montecito Planning Commission hearings are televised live on the County of Santa Barbara Television, CSB TV Channel 20 at 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, San Ynez Valley, Santa Maria, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcasts of Montecito Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSB TV Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Would you like me to proceed to the roll call?
Please.
All right. Commissioner Keller.
Here.
Commissioner Kupiak.
Here.
Commissioner Police.
Here.
Chair Sanauer.
Present.
And for the record, Chair Newman is absent today.
If we could move to item 5's agenda status report, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
And
Thank
Commissioners.
you. Thank you.
I am sitting in for Jeff Wilson today. He is actually on a panel at the American Planning Association conference this morning. So, the agenda status report, we will start with, let's see, on October 16th, which is the next Montecito Planning Commission hearing, you will be hearing the report on the Casa Dorinda Open Space Management Plan. That's the annual report. There is, and I'm not really sure how to pronounce this name. I'm probably butcher it. Bela Duplex. And then we will have the Hawker Philippides lot line adjustment. And also, Long Range Planning is going to be bringing back a package of zoning ordinance amendments, sort of cleanup items, and they will also include telecom ordinance amendments that we need to make in order to be consistent with the new FCC regulations. There will be a resiliency report. We will have a website demonstration, and then there'll be a workshop on Montecito Planning Commission best practices. Yeah. Let's see.
And
I have a question, if you please.
yes, Commissioner Keller.
I just wanted to clarify, because last time when we had an open space report, there was some confusion as to whether or not that was just something that was presented to us, or if it was something we could question and inquire about, can address in any way. I would just like to know the scope of what we are going to be able to do during that report.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, it's an informational report, so you can certainly ask questions of staff and gain more information, but there's no actual action by the commission. So it's not as if you're approving the report or making any determinations about the report. It's just informational.
Yes, there was some concern about the use of herbicides, and I think last time we had a discussion about that, and I'm just wondering if that's an area we can delve into, just because that was a very important topic to all of us.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, I will certainly let staff know that you have an interest in that, and then they can make sure that they address it in their presentation, but you can certainly ask questions about it.
Okay, thank you.
So to follow up on that.
Yes.
We will have someone from Casa Dorinda present. We will request that, I think. If we are asking questions, which we will, I think it would be very helpful to have them here. Thank you.
Sure, Madam Chair. I'll forward that request to the Executive Director. Let me just see, we covered October 16th, and then we have hearings scheduled for November 20th and December 18th, but we don't have any items on those agendas yet.
Regarding the November meeting date, there was some discussion that the Planning Commission has a full cannabis agenda, and they may be looking for an additional date. Is that correct?
That's
That
correct.
has not been worked through yet, is that right?
Madam Chair, that
And
is
we will be
correct.
apprised as soon as that gets agendized or settled.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
So does that complete both your agenda status report and projection report?
That does.
Okay.
I hope.
Okay. We're on to public comment. Do we have, is there anyone here present who would like to comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Thank you. Next, item 7 on the agenda is Planning Commissioner's informational reports. Commissioner Keller.
Thank you. Now, do we call you chair today or vice chair, or what is your proper title?
My proper title, perhaps today, is whatever you wish to address me as.
Oh, be careful with that. Thank you. Well, as was reported in July, we did have a roundabout meeting on June 18th to sort of finalize our recommendation regarding the Olive Mill roundabout. And then the Montecito representatives were asked to stay after because they wanted to segue right into seeing what of those items we wanted to carry over into the San Ysidro roundabout. And everyone there, which was Commissioner Senauer, myself, and John Watson and Claire Gottstanker from the Montecito Planning Commission, MBAR, said that there was concern because we did not feel there was community support and consensus around the necessity for this roundabout, and there was a lot of much opposition to it, neighborhood opposition. And so we didn't have any further discussion at that point, but we did subsequently schedule, Commissioner Senauer and I, a meeting with Walter Rubalcava, a county engineer, and Chris Snedden. And they went over in great detail the development of the notion for the roundabout. Since 1992, the intersection there at San Ysidro and the 101 has been identified as, I think, a Category F service level. And so it's been something that's been almost 30 years in the making in terms of their wanting to do something about it. And some of the suggestions that I had heard, the stoplight, traffic coordinators, i.e. a person, and various other options had all been considered, and they had successfully determined that nothing would really work adequately. The stoplights in particular simply could not be coordinated to deal with both the southbound off-ramp and the northbound on-ramp and the crossing over traffic. So they showed us the model, the diagram of the proposed roundabout, and we, both Commissioner Center and I, expressed the concern about pedestrian safety as being a really high priority, since there's the new walkway that's along Jameson, and there's the Safe Routes to School that comes down San Ysidro. The current design of the roundabout really takes pedestrian safety into account. It angles everything so that drivers are able to see pedestrians. It keeps pedestrian flow out of the flow of traffic. It's a single lane roundabout. So we asked a lot of questions and were given very thoughtful answers. And we both, I think I can speak for both of us, came out of the meeting feeling that a lot of thought had gone into this and that they'd come up with the best possible solution, assuming that some change or improvement needs to be made. And the thing we're most concerned about at this point are the options for lighting. Since many of the neighbors are very concerned about lighting, there have been suggestions of lighting options that have been adapted on the East Coast. And possibly by the time this actually gets built, some of those lighting options might be more standard. They're low-level lighting, they're much less intrusive, and these might become options by the time the roundabout gets built. Subsequently, there was a joint County Planning Commission, County Board of Architects review and Montecito Board of Architects review meeting on August 12th to go over the Olive Mill Roundabout and their recommendations. I was not able to attend that meeting, and I'm sorry I can't report on that. There is going to be a San Ysidro working group meeting, and we're trying to set a date on the week of October 7th. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Keller. Any other informational reports or comments? Thank you.
Yes, last week I attended the quarterly meeting of the American Institute of Architects. I want to thank Mr. Wilson, who attended that meeting to give a report to the community of architects on the status of recovery in Montecito. I also was asked at that moment, and I want to, since we have televised coverage, to remind the community that on October 5th, the American Institute of Architects will hold their Architours event, which is themed as the art of architecture. There are a number of projects that have been recently completed that I think that the community would be very interested to see, and the ticket sales that are involved in that event help support the Architectural Foundation and other events for student scholarship. But it's really a wonderful event. I just want everybody to know that it's an opportunity for them to go and see some of the terrific things that are happening in Santa Barbara.
Thank you, Commissioner Kupiak. Any other reports? I have a few, and I'm going to do it by topic this time rather than dates and places. Roundabout, I'll continue with Commissioner Keller's narrative. We do, I believe, have our next meeting October 10th, 9 to 11, for the San Ysidro Working Group. There is a tentative schedule for the Olive Mill combined MBARS, or BARS, BARs, and City and County on October 11th, Friday, 3 to 5. That is tentative, but that's what I have on my calendar. There is the topic of recycling in Montecito between Montecito Water District and Montecito Sanitary District. They continue to have working group meetings. I went to the last one last month. There's going to be a joint operation committee meeting tomorrow, Thursday, the 19th at 10 a.m. at the Sanitary District. There is a topic, and perhaps it will be in the director's report, on a community service district task force that Supervisor Williams has organized and is just getting involved with stakeholder organization. And he has requested that Montecito Water District and Montecito Sanitary District send representatives, and I assume Fire Protection District also. But it is in the beginning stages of discussion with the stakeholder task force, and I recommend anyone who is interested to contact Supervisor Williams' office to find out details. Right now, that's all that's out there right now. I did attend a LAFCO presentation regarding possible community service district organization by Paul Hood and at the Water District, and that was very informative. And he may speak to the community too at large on this as it proceeds. The other issue in Montecito right now is a helispot, which perhaps the director, in the director's report, it might be referenced in the Planning Commission next September 25th, next week. It's a continuing item that was before them in June. It's at 2800 Via Real and Carp, which is Carpinteria, which is north of 101. And although perhaps there could be clarity on this, but as I understand, a CDP needs to be issued, which has not. The helispot is in place, so it's after the fact. and there is a lot of community involvement and concern regarding this. So September 25th, the PC will be holding a hearing on that. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much. Commissioner Palucci.
Yes, Felice. I have a comment, or actually a question. Maybe the staff can answer this. In regards to the roundabout discussion that's been going on in Montecito and San Isidro, will it appear in front of the Montecito Planning Commission yet this year? Some type of request to vote on?
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Commissioner Police, I don't believe that anything is scheduled to come before MPC this calendar year.
Yes, my understanding, no application has been made at this time.
They're working on getting their application submitted to the department. And I don't have I am not currently up to date exactly on where that is, but I have been being briefed on both the roundabouts and the 101 expansion.
I guess I was just under the understanding that there's a sensitive time element regarding getting this thing approved prior to bringing it to Caltrans, and I'm just curious. But if you don't know about it, we don't know about it. So, okay.
Correct.
I can accept that.
Correct.
All right, going forward, we will take item 9, minutes, review of the minutes to be considered. Do we have any comments or additions or thoughts on these minutes? Thank you. Commissioner Keller.
Well, I'm sure everyone noticed this, but Commissioner Pulice was not listed as a commissioner being present. No, it only listed 4 of us. You were there on the 17th, and actually you're referenced later in terms of the vote on the minutes in which you abstained, and so I think we need to include him as a member of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Keller. Any other adjustments, additions, comments? So thank you. We'll make, anyone have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as corrected.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, the minutes of July 17th, 2019 are so approved. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Could we have a roll call, please? Thank you.
Commissioner Keller.
Actually, I would like to go back and have a little discussion.
Okay, discussion, please.
I just feel as though there was such concern and conversation about the proliferation. Sorry. There was such concern and much discussion about the potential proliferation, a word we used a lot last month, or 2 months ago, of telecommunications devices, and I don't really see that reflected here, except in the condition. Is there any, I just feel it would be appropriate, since it was such a strong concern of all of us, realizing that this was just the first of what could be many, many devices that will be installed, and many other permits that will come before us. Is there any way to include that as part of the record?
I think as a comment, I think that's fine, but do you have an idea of how you'd like to word that?
Possibly, we could precede the conditions, number 31 that was added, and number, I guess 31 was added to both. We could say, due to the concern about the possible proliferation of devices on multiple sites, comma, the equipment to be installed by Crown Castle shall be available for use by any other carrier if that additional use is compatible with any existing use. So just a phrase
So-
in front of that condition, is that?
So you're suggesting that the condition be changed as opposed to just a little notation added?
Well, I guess we can't change the condition. How can we add it, how can we add a notation just as part of the, because there's only the action, and then there's only the conditions. So may I ask council where it might be possible to add that information?
Chair and Commissioner Keller, if so desired by the commission, perhaps there could be, well, let me preface this by saying the action is what action was taken on that day, and the conditions were those that were proposed on that day. Perhaps there could be, if the commission so desired, a separate notation regarding the discussion. So it's separate from the official action or the official conditions that just says discussion, as part of the commission's deliberations, concern was expressed regarding proliferation of telecommunications facilities.
Well, that'd be fine if we can put that somewhere. There's action, there's revisions to conditions. I don't know where the note might be possible, but if the rest of the commissioners agree that, since that seemed to be such a strong concern of all of ours, that just have some record of it would be important. And I like your language, so if you can just tell us where specifically it would be appropriate to put it in.
Chair and Commissioner Keller, it could go either at the end of the summary of the item or prior to the action. I would recommend keeping the action and the official action of the commission, those two items together, but it could either precede or come at the end of
Okay,
the
then,
summary.
I see. 'Cause I think you're right. We have to keep the action and the conditions separate. So right after in number 1, the paragraph, and in number 2, the paragraph after Environmental Quality Act, if we could add a notation there. I'm sorry, would you mind repeating what you said if you can? Because it summed it up nicely.
Commissioner Keller, if I can. The recommendation was having a separate notation, which would be discussion followed by a colon, as part of the commission's deliberations. Concern was expressed regarding the proliferation of telecommunications facilities.
Thank you. I would just ask if my fellow commissioners felt that was sufficient or appropriate.
Commissioner Kupiak.
Just to be specific, I think after the colon, I think it's the reason for this condition was our conversation about, it wasn't just that we had a discussion, the reason this condition is there is because of our concern for continuing proliferation of equipment.
Chair and Commissioners, so the Commission's official action is expressed and conveyed in the summary here. And so the condition that was made is written verbatim. The Commission's intent in making that condition is sort of contained within the record of that day. So unless that language was specified as part of the condition, I would recommend allowing the condition that was made to stand on its own language. The record for that day reflects the Commission's intent. But if you would like to have that separate notation upon approval by the Commission, you could have that separate note. But I would recommend having the condition
Separate from the,
correct.
I agree.
Do we have further discussion? So if we move forward on the adding the discussion colon, is this correct? As council has recommended. I would just like to clarify again exactly where it's going to be placed. It will follow what? the sentence that you just supported as far as discussion?
So, Chair and Commissioners, the notation
Yes.
could be added at the beginning of the summary. So it could be precede the action, or it could just come at the end. But it just has to be separate from the
Correct.
official.
Correct, correct. Do the commissioners have a sense of where it should be placed?
I think it should be placed at the end and after the summary, personally.
I agree.
After the sentence that says implementation of the California Environmental Quality Act, new paragraph, discussion, et cetera, et cetera.
Do we have consensus on the addition?
Yes, I think so.
And we have consensus on the placement of the addition? Correct? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, all right. So,
Do we
if,
need to vote on this? or not?
yes, I'm coming to that.
Sorry.
All right. So discussion is closed. And do we have a motion?
I need to amend my motion,
You do need to amend your motion,
and so I
please.
move that we approve the minutes as corrected and as amended.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Do we have discussion? No, seeing no discussion, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec,
Aye.
Commissioner Police,
Aye.
and Chair Senauer.
Aye,
Motion passes 4-0.
thank you. So we will move to Director's Report, please, and Board of Supervisors hearing summary. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, there are a couple of things that the commission asked that we talk about today, which include an item that went to the board on August 27th, which was regarding the performance security for the debris nets. And on the 27th of August, the board did take an action to essentially establish or segregate and restrict an amount that is equal to the required performance security to basically back up the partnership in securing that those debris nets would ultimately be removed. So they did take action to do that. Yep. And then there was a question about the Jameson Trail, and Chair Newman had emailed me, and I did the research and spoke with Public Works Department, and Jeff Wilson and I sat down with them, and indeed the improvements that were made along Jameson are exempt from coastal development permits, and I can, if we want to take the time, we can read the section of the code, but the code does outline certain repair and maintenance activities that the Public Works Department can undertake, and some aspects of that include ensuring that it's a safe path of travel along a road, so they can make some safety improvements as they're repairing the road, because the road, as you know, was pretty damaged and the curb was pretty damaged. So that is the sort of short version of how the trail ended up being in that location, but it was considered exempt from the coastal development permits.
Do we have any comments on that? Questions?
I have
Commissioner?
I have a question regarding the nets. You were saying that the bond was to equal, or the security was to equal the removal of the nets. Is that also the removal of the material behind the nets?
I presume,
Because that's
Madam
what the
Chair,
cost
yeah,
is.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Police, it would necessitate complete removal of whatever
Debris.
Right. They wouldn't take the nets out and leave debris ready to come down, presumably, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's basically to restore it back to what it was when the debris, when the permit ends.
Right, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Keller?
I believe I was the one that asked about the Jameson Trail because the similar path down San Ysidro took 3 to 4 years and had a lot of controversy and opposition, and the Jameson pathway seemed to go in practically overnight. So I was just curious about the process because I didn't know if there'd been the kind of public input opportunity or the same kind of process required for both of the trails. And I know there is going to be resurfacing, but I don't, when you mentioned there's the curb damage, they put a curb in order to be able to put the trail there. So they're going to, I guess, resurface the street, but I don't think anything else is happening in regard that will directly impact the trail. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to either of them, I just was concerned at the lack of consistency and the lack of clear process or the possibility for public input, because I don't think anybody's opposed to it, but if they were, I didn't see there was an opportunity to have a voice about that.
Madam
So-
Chair, Commissioner Keller, I spoke with Public Works about the difference in the process, and they did undertake a greater public process for the San Ysidro Trail. There was still no permit issued for that. But they did take input on that public trail, and then I think I can't really speak to what their process was in terms of deciding whether to do that or not on the Jameson Trail, but they did not take public comment on the Jameson Trail. When they went in and made the improvements, they had worked with the Bucket Brigade and they installed some kind of path along there because I think I ride my bike along that road pretty regularly, and there really wasn't a place for pedestrians to walk at the time. And so there was a decision to create a safer environment for the pedestrians. We can talk to Public Works about their future endeavors in terms of when they're doing road repair and when you might see some kind of improvement like that, and whether or not they'll undertake a public process. And I can pass that along as an interest in the Montecito Planning Commission of having them engage in some kind of public process.
If I may continue, it's my concern about consistency, because there are other areas that would benefit from a trail like this, and so does it. What would the procedure be? What would the process be? Would there be chance for public input? And does it take a specific group to spearhead it, or is this something that I'm just saying? How would this occur? And I would like to see there be a pretty clear path, so to speak, ahead for putting these in the future.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, I will speak with the Public Works Director about that, but these are processes that they undertake and projects that they undertake, and they don't require planning's review. So I need to direct your comment to the Public Works Department and have them provide information on what their future plans are and how they might engage the public in that process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of like to know a little bit about the difference of that, because having sat through innumerable meetings and hours about the San Ysidro Trail, and not that I think everyone is in favor of the walking trail on North Jameson. There's no question about that. The difference in quality between the physical appearance of those two trails is remarkably different. One is very thoughtful. It has meanders in it. It has planting pockets on both sides. It feels very naturalistic. And the North Jameson Trail doesn't. And it seemed to kind of happen overnight without public comment. I don't know if it ever went before the Montecito Board of Architectural Review. And my opinion of this matter is I applaud them for what they've done, but magic happens when there is input by professionals that know how to make comments. And the two projects are not the same in terms of quality. And it's kind of a shame, because it's easy to make that happen. You know, a few minor adjustments to that trail would have made it the same in quality as San Ysidro Road. And many people in the community are stunned that it went in that fast and it doesn't have that same character. And I think we need to ensure that there's a process
Madam
where
Chair,
that doesn't happen
yeah,
again.
Commissioner Kupiak, I did ask Public Works staff about that, and I am limited in my information because this happened when I was not here, but I asked them that very question, and they did talk about the limited space that they had to put in a path. There was a lot more right-of-way and a lot more space to do a meandering trail along San Ysidro than what you have on Jameson. So that was part of their explanation as to why it was designed the way it was.
And I would challenge that explanation. I mean, I walk the path. I walk both paths, and there's plenty of adjustment room within that path to make sure that something that was really a little bit better, because we're always striving for what's a little bit better, and a little bit better doesn't happen without process. And I'm a great advocate of that process. So I want to make sure that we have some way of being assured that happens if this continues. There's another project like this. A straight line shot sidewalk is what we've tried to avoid in Montecito forever, and that's what we got.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kupiak, I will certainly forward your concerns and comments along.
Thank you.
Any other comments before I make a comment or two? Yes. Please forward that to Public Works. While there is not an imperative that they come before us, either in information, briefing, etc., I believe that is our request, that stakeholders in the community need input as in many areas, in consistency and also aesthetically. And that's what we're about. I know we're involved with policy matters. However, this also comes within our purview in a subjective way, and it's of great import. And that North Jameson mile, I believe it's a mile between, or half mile, excuse me, it's a half mile between Olive Mill and San Ysidro, has not had any pedestrian access for
forever.
Decades, forever. And I think there was a hope that it would happen at some time, that it happened in this way, with this urgency, and with no input from the stakeholders and the community, I think is very troubling and unfortunate. So I would like to ask on behalf of the commissioners that Public Works come to perhaps our next meeting or the meeting after and basically give us a briefing. I think it would be a win-win for all of us. Thank you so much. Sure. Do you have any other reports?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this isn't really in your area of responsibility, but I thought you might be interested in hearing sort of how things have progressed with the cannabis and the ordinance amendments. And the board did adopt a cap for the inland area, and that's 1,575 acres. That's in addition to the cap that is already in the Carpinteria greenhouse overlay, which is 186 acres. We have applications in that exceed those caps. So some people will be getting business licenses, because the cap is actually in the business license. It's not in the land use development code. So that is run by the CEO's office. But people will be able to come and apply for permits. They can get their permits approved. They can get their permits issued, but they can't operate until they get a business license. And so some people are still submitting applications, and with the hopes that they will ultimately be able to get a business license. They may have to wait until somebody falls out of their business license in order to gain one, but the cap I think goes into effect. I think it actually is in effect now. I think it is in effect now. I think I can't remember if the 30 days has expired yet.
Commissioner Kupiak, do you have a question?
Do you have an idea of what, in terms of the process for how this 1,000 acres of potential cannabis farming will be allocated? Is it by first come, first serve? Who gets their application in and approved first? Or is it really a planning process that says there are more strategic locations where that 1,000-acre allocation is more appropriate to the community interests than just who comes up and gets online first.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kupiak, it is a first come, first serve process. So if somebody comes in with an application, if they come in with a complete application and it can get processed through the system, then they go to the CEO's office and submit an application for their business license, and it's who gets through the process.
The reason that I ask this question is I realize there's some very sensitive issues about who lives next door to who. Do avocado growers live next door to the cannabis growers? There are issues of pesticide use. And, you know, the conversation that goes on outside here is really, you know, quite heated. And it just seems to me that to allocate this just by, you know, who gets up online first seems to be not in the best interest of the community, and that some form of, you know, timeline that bundles these
Madam
things
Chair,
together.
yeah, if I can, I'm sorry
Sure.
to interrupt you, Commissioner Kupiak, but I think our county council is concerned that we're wandering into an area that is actually not on your agenda. So this is, I'm,
I make my comments as a citizen, not as a commissioner.
thank you, thank you. But there are a couple of other changes that happened in that ordinance. One of them is it allows people who have submitted an application, once we have accepted their application, they can then open an application with the CEO's office, so there can be coordination on the process, so that they don't have to wait until the very end of the permit process to be able to start working with the CEO's office, because there are other departments that get involved, like the fire department and the sheriff, and so it's good planning and good for the process for there to be concurrent processing. They also made an adjustment to the business license ordinance, which allows people who have been working for a long time in the process, potentially. Some people have submitted quite some time ago. They may get an appeal, and that appeal might go all the way to the Coastal Commission. And so the board made a decision to allow people, once their permit gets approved by our department, that means the 10-day appeal period runs and an appeal may be filed, but once they get approved, they can actually get in line for a business license, so that permits that get appealed from one level to the next, that could, if it goes all the way to the Coastal Commission, can take 2 years. So they wanted to give people an opportunity, had been working hard in the process, to be able to sort of hold a spot for that business license.
Commissioner Keller.
Yes, thank you. So you say the cap is 1,575.
Correct.
Does that include previously illegal operations, or is there any kind of calculation as to what's existing?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Keller, so if you have, I mean, again, we're sort of wandering into an area.
Well, I was just wondering
Yeah.
if this cap was for new, or if the cap took into account the fact that there have been some existing cultivation that may not have been properly processed or licensed.
So if there are illegal grows and they have not submitted an application, or they don't have a state license, those are getting shut down, and they are not included in the cap. And as you know, there have been, if you've read in the paper, there have been numerous raids where those operations have been shut down. So if you're illegal and you're not following the rules, and you don't have a state license and you don't have a business license, then you will be shut down.
Thank you. So it's 1,575 new acres.
And there's some non-conforming acreage in there that is in the process of getting their permits.
Thank you.
Yes, are you going to continue with cannabis, or?
No, I am
Okay.
not.
We're walking, I guess, a fine line with our questioning, but it's of import that we ask. I have a question about odor control and where it got placed. It's an objective question. before business it got moved, right? As to where it would become a condition.
Madam Chair, so there was an effort and a direction to the department to require, and this is in the Carpenter Valley, to require that they have operating odor control before they actually obtain their business license. So.
And that was a new addition or a condition that existed but was replaced. It was placed some in front of the business license. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I think that concludes my director's report.
And
welcome.
thank you. And we have no more cannabis questions. Is that correct? We're set up. Okay. Yeah, we have to stay clear of that. Okay. Thank you very much. Project status update. Who will be availing themselves to inform us?
Madam Chair, I don't have anything to report on the project status update.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me get the right agenda here.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Thank you.
Commissioner
So
Keller.
this report that we got from Mr. Villalobos, what is this, an update? Under what category does this come?
So that's for item number 2.
Thank you, sorry.
So continuing, waive public hearing, which is 12. We have two, is that correct? We basically have no action on these, correct?
Correct. So the commission never really has any action on this. This is just a supplemental
briefing,
noticing
right, correct.
requirement of that process.
Correct. Can we take any comments on them, if anyone does? No. No comments. All right. So let's go to the standard agenda, please. Thank you. Number 1, flood control easement, government code conformity, 2110 East Valley Road.
So I'll just briefly just read that into the record, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay, great.
Please.
The following is a hearing on requests of John Fry, the Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. Consider case number 19 GOV9, application filed on July 26, 2009, for a determination that the district's proposed acquisition of an easement conforms with the comprehensive plan of the County of Santa Barbara pursuant to California Government Code Section 65402C.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Case number 19 GOV9 is a request by Flood Control for a acquisition of an easement for properties at 2110 and 2126 East Valley Road. The acquisition would be for the maintenance of Buena Vista Creek by Flood Control. The easement would be approximately 14,354 square feet. As you can see up on the screen, the two properties are shown in green and in blue. Staff's recommendation for today is to determine that the project conforms with the comprehensive plan, including the Montecito Community Plan, and to transmit the conformity report required by Government Code 65402 to Santa Barbara County Flood Control and to the Board of Supervisors. I'm available if you have any questions, and I believe John Fry from Flood Control is also available.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Keller?
Yes,
Thank
please. Could you just, is there anything currently on these two properties? Or was there until recently anything on these two properties?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, I'm not familiar if there are any structures. I think John Fry can probably speak to that.
I can
Thank
answer that
you.
question. Good morning,
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Madam Chair
Thank you.
and members of the commission. I'm John Fry with the Santa Barbara County Flood Control District. A little quick background on these two easements. This is a reach of Buena Vista Creek just immediately up from East Valley Road that we have been in and out of regularly over the decades, because this happens to be a stretch of creek that just naturally accumulates debris. And we were actually contacted by the property owners, there's two separate parcels here, as to whether we would accept a voluntary easement from these owners. So they're the ones that approached us. We did not approach them. But given the offer, we said absolutely. So there is a driveway on one of the parcels. In fact, it may be a private roadway that serves a number of parcels. And then on the other property, the easement really only covers the creek. If you were to drive by and glance upstream, you'd probably recognize there's kind of a cottage-like structure. I'm seeing some recognition there, which has been there for decades. And in fact, we have pictures going back decades of flood events with rock and whatnot piled up against that structure. That's the area that we're talking about here.
So the property lines are actually on the left side. We're talking about a little more than half of the southern half of that parcel.
Yeah, I would say that the location map is a little overdone. I actually have probably a more accurate depiction of the easement itself here. The one on the left or the west, the easement itself is not extending beyond within the limits of the cross-hatched area.
So, but that is one parcel there with the outline from Oak Grove, East Valley Road, and then the two lines that we see, correct?
Correct. Those are two separate parcels, and the easements that we are pursuing are only small portions of those two parcels.
Thank you. That was what wasn't clear. Thank you.
Any questions, further questions? Commissioner Clute?
Just have a question. Is there any preliminary plans for any expenditures on this easement that you're going to acquire?
Plans for any improvements, general
Yes.
improvements? No.
Okay.
Commissioner Keller?
Okay, sorry, I'm back to questioning. So this means that they are willing to grant an easement. Is there cost involved with purchasing the easements?
There are costs involved in acquiring the easement. We have to have a surveyor draft up a legal meets and bounds description. Has to go through the process of, staff time to take it to the board of directors to accept, staff time to bring it here to 65402. So there are costs, but there will not be compensations offered to the property owners that offered them to the flood control district.
Okay, and then what is the intent? Once you have this easement, what is the plan for it?
Well, the intent is perhaps to simply provide an easement in an area that we have historically worked all the time anyway. Really nothing more than that.
So it's basically just to be able to go up, clean it out. You're not going to build any kind of structure. You're not going to put in any kind of debris basin or any kind of barriers?
That is correct. Not at this location. As I mentioned previously, this reach of creek immediately upstream of the Caltrans Bridge, it fills in with sediment. In fact, after the debris flow, you don't even know there's a creek there. So we do have to go in there and remove that material.
Okay, so the purpose of this is for you to have access to clear out the creek on a regular basis?
On an as-needed basis,
On an
yes.
as-needed basis. And in the past, we haven't had this kind of presentation in terms of any kind of flood control acquisition. Has this not happened before?
I'm sorry, I'm not following that
I'm just saying
question.
this seems unique in my experience. We've had Randall Road and discussions about the purchase of property there, but that was specifically to build a flood basin. But in terms of obtaining easements and getting permission to do this kind of work? Is this something that regularly happens, or is this also an unusual circumstance?
I wouldn't say it's entirely out of the ordinary.
Madam-
It may be a little unusual for an offer, a voluntary offer from a private property owner, but we've brought quite a few 65402s in the past year.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
believe we have a comment here from
Madam
council.
Chair, Commissioners, the reason it's coming to the commission is because it is a 65402. And so when a consistency determination is required, you will see it.
Any other yes. Commissioner.
My question, probably should ask in the first go-around, but the nets that are going to be installed or have been installed in Buena Vista, will they have some effect on your reduced activity at this location in the future?
No. Short answer, no. The nets are, and I'm not really here to represent the nets, of course, but the nets are a temporary feature, and this would be an ongoing, long-term thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one observation. I think we can look at this too as basically the community participating very positively in adaptive management of land use. I think they are coming forward and they understand this is part of resiliency and they can offer to contribute. And I think this is very positive. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
So no action is,
No, is
Commissioner?
there any action required?
there is no action required as far as I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, there's a set of recommendations as part of your staff report.
Is up on the screen. So reading the recommendations, do the commissions have any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, can we move forward with a motion to accept these recommendations?
I would so move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
We have a second. Do we have discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kupiec,
Aye.
Commissioner Police,
Yes.
Chair Steinhauer.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And our next item, please.
The Montecito Planning Commission will receive a report from the Planning and Development Department on rebuilding after the Thomas Fire and January debris flow.
Thank you.
Chair and Commissioners, this is the Thomas Fire and January debris flow rebuilding report. You'll see on the screen this first slide represents the safety inspections that were performed shortly following the debris flow in January of 2018. So as you can see on the left-hand side, those were the original green, yellow, and red inspections. And then on the right is the current status of those same inspections. If we continue on to the next slide, there's a visual depiction of how those changes have now occurred. So you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen the total number of yellow and red tagged inspections. And now this is the first month in which we are over the 51% threshold for now green status placards for homes that were either yellow or red. Continuing on to the next slide, this is a list of permits for recovery of structures that were damaged or destroyed during the debris flow. On the left-hand side, you will see the number of planning permits, and on the right side, you will see the number of building permits. And the next slide is going to show a more visual depiction of these changes over time. So above, on the top portion of the page, you'll see the raw data that is going into each of these graphs below. On the left-hand side, the graph shows over time the number of permits for for zoning permits, for coastal development permits, land use permits, and then for like exemptions that have been approved and issued. So on the bottom, so on the left-hand side for each month, you'll see the number of applications submitted, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see the number of approved permits. And you'll see a steady increase over time for those. Continuing on to the right-hand side of the screen, the building permits that have been submitted and approved are also shown. And again, there's a somewhat steady increase over time.
May I ask a question at this time?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. In this slide, in your dates that run across the top of the tables, you have 2020 dates, 320 date. Is that 2020?
So starting from the left, so Chair, so 220 represents February 20th of 2019. And so this was the first hearing, that was the date of the hearing that this report was first provided. So that's been our running tally. So you'll see since February of this year.
Okay, so this is all in this year, 2019.
That's correct.
Okay.
This data represents
Thank you.
existing data, nothing into the future.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the next slide. This is the disaster summary by status. As you'll remember, we've categorized each of the different properties that were impacted by the debris flow into categories based on our interactions with members of the public. And so you'll see that a good portion of the cases that were initially impacted have been closed. The property work is done and the case is now closed. You'll also see that about 13.2% of the properties are still working in the rebuild process actively with our planners. There are a number of properties that are on hold, about 16.2%, that are awaiting owner action. There's about 2% that we have learned that the property owners are on hold waiting to sell the property. And then we still have a number of properties, about 12% that we have not been able to make contact with.
Yes.
I have a question. The effect on the staff with these permit process, is there, by virtue of having so much of this completed, does that reduce the amount of effort and work that has to go on in your operation, and it can be used for speeding up other processes that are out there besides Montecito?
Commissioner Police, through the chair, I would say that really what this data represents is that we've kind of had a trickling through of projects, and we're going to continue to see that. And so I don't think that's going to impact the availability of staff. I think we're going to continue to see probably a similar amount of work. What I would be looking forward to is the kind of the 2-year mark following the debris flow is coming up. And I know that from dealing with specific property owners, I know that there's some people that do have that threshold of needing to get in their homes by that time. So that's something that we would be looking at in the future and trying to get folks completed and through the process for that time period.
Thank you.
Commissioner Keller.
Can you please, well, not surprised, but it's distressing to see the number of property owners who have not responded to county outreach, which equals about 60 property owners if it's 12% of 524. And how has that changed over the past few months? Has that stayed consistent, or are you making slow progress with actually reaching people?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, I would say that we have made some slow progress, but it's on a very small scale for that number. That percentage has stayed fairly consistent over the past few months. I would say that in an effort to understand these numbers better, we've been working with First District. Lisa Valencia Schrod is actually here in the crowd, and we're working with her team to help synthesize the data that we have and maybe reach out and kind of figure out what's going on with these outliers that maybe haven't been in communication with planning and development.
Do you have any statistics as to what's on those properties where you haven't gotten a response? I mean, are there homes that are sitting damaged, or are there outbuilding? I mean, what are the condition of those? Does it vary, or is it a specific kind of property that hasn't been responded to?
Chair Stenauer, Commissioner Keller, there's going to be probably a wide range of what the condition is for each of those projects or the properties, and again, I would say that we'll probably have more information in the coming months as we work with First District. They are taking raw data from our database and comparing the safety assessments and the changes of those safety assessments to the actual permits that we've issued. And then they're also going out into the field and doing a reconnaissance to see what exactly it's looking like out in the field. So that's going to help ground truth what we know for each of these properties.
Thank you. I mean, that is a concern I have, that there might be some derelict buildings that just sit there and may pose safety hazards as a result of no response from the owners and nothing being done about it. So the First District is following up with that. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Would it be helpful to have staff come up and have a briefing, a quick briefing? That would be, since you're here, that would be appreciated. Thank you. If you could please introduce yourself and your capacity. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. My name is Lisa Valencia Sherrod. I'm staff of Supervisor Williams in the First District. I worked previous to returning back to the First District office, I was in the Montecito Recovery Center, where on behalf of the county with Ben Romo. And there we met with a lot of property owners to help them interface between what they were going through in the county and other levels of government. So from the Montecito Center, actually inherited our contact list from there. It's very trusted, and I don't even share it with other staff in the county because people said, don't share this, just because of the difficulty of what everyone's been through. So we actually now have a team that's in partnership with the CEO's office, to recovery assistants who also worked in the Montecito Recovery Center. We have a lot of personal relationships with people in the community, especially those kind of with the most damage and loss in the community. So we're really actually happy to work with Planning and Development and Joe and his team to kind of combine data analysis with our interactions with people and a real personal outreach to them. So we plan to have a report ready for next month.
Any questions from the commissioners? Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Thank you. I have a question, Joe, regarding the no response. How has that percentage changed over, in general? And what was it? It is 12.6%, and it has been reduced?
Chair Stenauer, I don't have that exact number for you today. I could look back at the previous reports that we've prepared.
There has been, yes, improvement for outreach and having owners respond. Is that correct? Some, minimal.
I would have to look at the data again just to confirm. I would say that the percentage may have adjusted because the other percentages, the other categories have changed. Whether or not that number has changed significantly or not, I'm not sure. But I would say, based on my recollection, that it's been fairly consistent since we've started tracking this data.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much. And we then will move on to...
Madam Chair, before we move on, Council very astutely pointed out that we should offer
Public comment.
public comment on this
Yes.
item. Yeah.
Is anyone present who would like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Thank you. And for the last item, Commissioners' requests for future agenda topics.
I apologize, but Mr. Villalobos said this sheet that we were sent was in regard to this item 2, and we just haven't referenced it, so.
I think it was referenced, but there was no comments or discussion on it. Would we like to revisit this and have comments regarding this?
Just wanted to give the other commissioners an opportunity.
I think, yeah. Do commissioners want to review this? It was item, I believe, 2. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you. We're referencing the status report of projects from March 18 through July 19. Thank you. Moving on then to Commissioners' requests for future agenda topics. Do we have any?
I think the item that we touched
Yes.
on before about having some kind of conversation with Public Works about process
Yes.
is one of the things I'd like to see on our agenda.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I support that. Anything else? Seeing none, adjournment of our meeting of September 18th, 2019 at 10:10 a.m. Thank you very much.